Today, I'm honored to have Nora Herold join us on this podcast talking about channeling. Nora has been a part of my journey as well, like our other modalities and guests. And I'll be talking about that where necessary, weaving in conversation today for everyone who's listening. For those who don't know, Nora's been channeling for a very long time. And she's been channeling the Pleiadians, Yeshua, the fairy realm, which was one of my favorites. And then I ran into Nora's work when I first started watching the Gaia Network a long time ago. You had an interview with Ed, and where I was like so intrigued with your story and fascinated. And then later I booked a session with you, and it was mind blowing. So, Nora, could you let us all know a little bit about your background and where were your aha moments in your awakening to catapult you into where you are today?
Sure. Hi, Angela. First, thank
Thank you.
you.
Of course.
Thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm really happy to be here with you and to connect with you and your wonderful,
Thank you.
beautiful audience. Yes.
Thank you.
So, my beginnings, pretty much like right away as a child, I
Mhm.
was intuitive, sensitive, emotional, constantly curious and seeking like all the things. And I would have like these flashes of understandings about things at a young age. I remember when I was really young, like 7 or 8 years old, as I was falling asleep, it was like I was on the precipice of a deep understanding of everything, and then it would
Mhm.
just fall away.
Mm.
Um, so my interpretation back then, being raised Catholic, was, oh, I was about to understand who God was. That's
Mhm.
that's how my 7, 8-year-old mind framed it. And then when I was in my early 20s, very early, like 20, I got my first deck of tarot cards. I'd just always been fascinated by tools, and tarot was the thing that really called out to me first, and then did tarot readings for a long time and worked with crystals, and I was just constantly fascinated by the idea of extraterrestrials and
Mhm.
Atlantis and Sasquatch and you name it, right? If it
Mhm.
was like magical and beyond our third dimensional realm of existence and experience in a kind of normalized way, I wanted to know about it. And then I also was just very curious about everything,
Mhm.
very curious about politics and religion and healing and so many things. And my background, my degree is in theater, and I was a professional actress in Chicago all throughout my 20s while kind of in the background developing my abilities, putting
Mhm.
my attention and my focus on my abilities. And then in 1996, at the end of 1996, I had an experience with my spirit guide, Mirando. I had gone to a friend's apartment. She and I were tarot card reading buddies together. We worked at Victoria's Secret together. I always love to include that detail because I really am big on normalizing all of this and making it as accessible as possible, right? So
Mhm.
I'm not different or special than anybody. Yeah, I just put my attention here and
Yeah.
decided to grow this. Now, I do think we all are naturally inclined towards different things in our lives, and sometimes that's why we put our attention there. And yet, every one of us can sit down at a piano and plunk out a few keys, right? So, every
Sure.
one of us can have an experience of connection and contact. But I was hanging out with my friend Amy that night, and she was telling me about this friend of hers that she just met who was channeling her spirit guide. And when Amy said spirit guide, this kind of, oh, that's the thing went off inside of me. So I had been searching out really knowing I was searching. I used to go to one of the metaphysical bookstores in Chicago, Transitions bookstore, and I would sit there and I would look at all of the books on witchcraft and tarot and past lives and all of it. It was all interesting to me. But there was nothing that was like, oh, this is the book you should go home with. And I would leave feeling frustrated. So as Amy was talking with me, I said, well, let's try it. Like, let's try to connect with our guides. And, there was nobody in the room saying, well, you can't do that, or that's hard, right? It was
Mhm.
just a very playful moment between two dear friends. And we both sat and closed our eyes and focused in using our breath. And within a short amount of time, like a matter of a minute or two, I felt a being with me.
Mhm.
And I knew his color was yellow. I knew he was presenting as male, or I was making him male. They don't really have gender, right?
Yeah.
But we'll project that onto them to help us better understand the relationships. I knew his name started with an M, but what I felt was just this all-encompassing unconditional love beyond anything I'd ever experienced before as Nora. And it was just this complete pinnacle moment for me where I walked into Amy's apartment, one version of myself, and I left a few hours later as a very different version of myself. I
Mhm.
just started to bring fully online my own direct access to my records, meaning my other lifetimes and other experiences, very quickly, began to connect with many other beings, including the Pleiadians and the fairies, and it's just so many, channeled as much as I could all the time for anybody who would let me. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was pretty much my origins there.
Wow. Did you find that it amplified your ability at the beginning if you did it with a crowd, like with your friend, more
Yes,
so than by yourself?
absolutely. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and what I came to understand is that when you work multidimensionally in this way, 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 plus 1 kind of exponentially magnifies the energy, and suddenly everything becomes a bit easier. And when Amy and Wendy and I would gather together to channel, so we hung out regularly channeling and having fun. One of the gifts of that period of time was as one of us would be channeling for one of the other, the third observing would often be receiving the same exact information and messages in their own way of receiving it. So it's just wonderful confirmation and support developed the three of us had together.
That's interesting because, I met in my session in October of 2023. It was short and sweet and to the point, which is how I love your channeling. It just gets right to it. And you had said something, I have it recorded, so I re-listen to it quite often actually. And you had said, "You are a conduit. You just need to sink into it." And I was like, "Okay." And that helped me because I also tried some, what we called them cosmic experiments, where I also had a Reiki friends that do Reiki, and we'd meet at my house about every like twice a month to do our channeling, and I would go lay down on my couch, and I would connect to beings, and then my friends would also feel so thank you for confirming that too, that it does really amplify in a group setting, especially when you're starting out. And it also confirms that what you're hearing is correct if somebody else is also hearing it in the same setting. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I love teaching in group
Mhm.
form because the class then gets that experience as well as each are having their individual experience and then also being supported by everyone else's experience.
I love that. In your teachings, do you find that it's different if they're online or face to face? Because I get this question a lot. Like, does it really matter? So what's your take on that?
So it's only different because I can't give a physical hug at the end of the class. That is the
That's
only
beautiful.
difference I
Mhm,
noticed.
mhm.
Yeah, we took our work, John and I. So my partner John, he and I've been together, it'll be 26 years next week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So when we met, he was a Reiki master and I was already professional channel psychic tarot card reader. And very quickly, he and I started to teach together Reiki, channeling, and I was already doing some channeling classes, but this was all in-person work. And then we moved to California, and we continued to do in-person work, and then when COVID happened, I had already been feeling like, okay, I've taken my transmissions online. I'm doing a lot of podcasts and other kinds of work online. I
Mhm.
really need to take my classes online, be able to offer them to a bigger format. But I just couldn't conceptualize the structure of it because I was so
Mhm.
used to doing things in person. And there were often partner exercises. And then COVID happened. And, you know, that that was the moment where I was like, "Oh, now I have to
Kind of
I have to
forced
do
into
it."
it.
And it's been really exceptional, the classes and the work. And, the thing I like to say about, like, when we do Reiki attunements and Reiki, John is offers Reiki sessions through Zoom. Energy is not confined to time and space.
Mhm.
So, like, you and I right now, Angela, are
Mhm.
sitting in different physical locations, and yet we are sharing the same energy. But the same is true with the channeling classes, and often people feel sometimes just more comfortable in their own space, right? So if you
More
get to be in your
vulnerable.
own home, yeah,
Mhm.
opening up to something new and different, you have your own belongings around you, right?
Mhm.
I think that tends to facilitate more of a level of comfort in the classes, in the experience. So yes, there's in some way, I don't want to say it's better to teach online because it's not, but it's also not better to teach in person, right?
Yeah, I could understand that for sure. So everything's online now, and if you really wanna get out and venture out into different modalities and different things, you kinda have to go online, especially if it's not in your backyard. So that makes sense to me. I think that there's more of a vulnerability, when you're in your own space and your own surroundings. And then I don't know if this is for everybody, but Nora, when I have some, like, mind-blowing experiences online with a practitioner, I don't wanna do anything else but crawl in my bed and just like, ugh. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So,
So you don't have
yeah.
to get in a car and go home,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Could probably wreck or something by not seeing a stop sign in that moment, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, that I had once had an experience, when I was waitressing. So, I
Mhm,
was acting, waiting tables, and this is in my late 20s and early 30s, developing channeling abilities
mhm.
all at the same time. And I went in the bathroom, and there was somebody I was thinking about, I was really concerned about, so, like, I tried to buy locate while in the restaurant, right? So
Oh.
and I did.
Oh,
Part of myself away. And then I
good for
went
you.
back and tried to work. The computer wouldn't work for me. I couldn't use the credit card machine. None of the electronics in the restaurant would work for me. And I was completely spacey, right? And I looked at my manager and he said, "What is wrong?" And I said,
Mhm.
"I can't really explain it, but I have to go home." And he went, "Okay," and sent me home. So on the way home, I'm driving. I thought I need to eat something that will help. So I went into 7-Eleven and I got some juice and something. And when I pulled out of 7-Eleven, I tore the front bumper off of my car. Right. So as you just said, you
Lord.
probably go through a
Yeah.
stop sign. I got out, I put the bumper in the back seat of my car and drove home. Right. So yes, grounding is important
Mm,
and
yeah.
don't bilocate while you're waiting tables. It doesn't
Yeah,
work.
doesn't yeah, yeah. We are not multitaskers as we think we are. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Or you connect to many different energies, beings. The ones that you do most of the time are the Pleiadians, the fairies, Yeshua. How do you know which one you're connecting to in that moment? Do you call them in? Do they call you? Is it intention based on person to person? How do you know?
Yeah, great. That's such a great question. I and it's changed over the years
Mhm.
dramatically, right? So
Mhm.
initially when I started working, sometimes I would immediately who I was connecting with, and I would have to go
Mhm.
through a series of Q&A with myself and who I was connecting with. And this is one of the things I teach how to do in class, right? Because
Yeah.
this is how it is in the beginning. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, I feel this big energy. Whoa!" Like, and that can
It's
feel like
true.
enough. That can feel like
Mhm.
enough, right?
Mhm.
However, I wouldn't just accept information from some voice on the phone if I didn't know who I was talking to. So
Hmm.
I feel like having knowledge of who, what energy, what vibration, what frequency we're connecting with is really important. So now for me, it's like picking up the phone and knowing immediately who's on the other end. It's just an
Mhm.
immediate recognition in energy vibration. Sometimes what will occur when I work one on one with somebody is someone new to me will come
Mm.
because that is what they need. And typically in those moments, it's kind of more a classic mediumship type work where I'm
Sure.
connecting with someone they loved in this life who has passed. And often what will occur is I will have in that moment both a direct connection with who is coming through and then also my own support staff there to
Mhm.
facilitate the communication. So I
Mm.
don't even really have to directly channel who it is that has shown up for them because that's for them. I might channel them a bit, but then typically I will use my own familiar connections to source the information and
I
bring
see.
that through. I work with the Pleiadians, the fairies, right? Those are kind of my one, two big
Mhm.
energies. Yeshua is always present, just not always full voiced in front as the Pleiadians and the
Mm.
fairies are. And I use the term the fairies in a big, broad umbrella, the capital T, capital F. I'm laughing because they're like, yeah, talk about that. Um,
Very connected to the fairies on this side. I
yes,
get yeah.
Ursula, who I typically channel,
Mhm.
um, you know, presents as traditional fairy, although not tiny winged, right? They all really
Mhm.
want us all to know that these are gigantic beings of energy. However, the fairy realm is comprised of many, many different kinds of beings, from elf to pixie to brownie to dragon to unicorn to you name it. If we've conceptualized it here on Earth in some kind
Mystical.
of mythic, yes, format,
Mhm.
it exists in that fairy realm.
Mhm. Yeah. Speaking of during our session 2 and 23, you had mentioned out of nowhere, I think there's a daughter of yours that's really connected to the fairy realm, and you had given me some tips on how to find out, and I used them, which was just ask her about how the fairies lived, and she might shut me down, which she did the first 2 times, but then I kept asking at night when I tuck her in, and then all of a sudden she just started talking about how they used to live in the trees and what they used to collect and how they used to gather things, and since then, I've been doing all this work on myself and always digging in of the mothering me, like, "Oh, can we can we dive in a little bit about my kids?" And sure enough, she is all mystic. Miss Cha-Cha is all mystic. And it just makes sense with her personality right now too that she brought into this incarnate. I wanna thank you for that because that was also an igniter of remembrance for all of us in our own.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that leads me to how channeling can be so healing and transformative. Regardless if you're learning how to do it yourself or have a channeling experience with a channeler such as you, do you find that lots of people have these experiences after seeing you or being able to channel themselves?
I do find that after a session, it's really common for energetic adjustments and healing to have occurred in the
Mhm.
people that I'm working with that opens up many different things for them.
Mhm.
From, yes, the mystical and magical, and suddenly, oh, I'm having more of my own personal experience of channeling
Mhm.
to very third dimensional. Oh,
Mhm.
I've let love into my life in a meaningful way in a relationship. Oh, I'm expressing my creative energy in a way that I'd been withholding from myself. Oh, I stepped into new work that's 1,000 times more fulfilling than what I had before, right? Because
Mhm.
we work on these multidimensional levels here as humans. So I find that my work runs that gamut as well. Sometimes people come to me because they think they're kind of just wanting this like 5D information and connection,
Mm.
right? And we
Yeah.
end up diving into, oh, childhood, unhealed childhood trauma and relationship stuff and work stuff. And it's
Mhm.
all interconnected. We can't focus on one and disregard the rest because each
Right.
helps with the other. And I like to really somebody asked me recently to describe the Pleiadians, and
Yeah.
what came out of me in that moment was that it's a healing frequency,
Mhm. Mhm. I
right?
hear
So
that all the
this
time.
yeah, it's kind of my awareness of who they are has really shifted over the years from identifying them as a collective of beings, which doesn't really even make sense when you call when you call something a collective and then use the
Yeah.
word beings, right?
Being,
They
yeah.
don't individuate, right?
Yeah.
A collective being to this understanding that I am accessing a particular vibration, a particular energy, a particular frequency that is here, accessible and available to us at all times to facilitate our growth, our healing, our support, our awareness, etc.
Yeah. How treat this last weekend, and some people that are waking up, which was beautiful to see. They did ask about Palladians, and they said, are they evil or are they kind?" And they're very benevolent people. Could you fill us in for those who may be listening, thinking that same question about the Palladians in particular, since you work so closely with them and
Yeah,
set them
so
straight?
that's interesting. Uh, Well, it's funny. I mean, there's a lot of channeled information out there,
Mhm,
some of which brings through Pleiadian information that is very conspiratorial based,
mhm.
right? And so I think some of that then would inform a question like that. And also, I think a question like that comes from religious upbringing and
Yes.
ideas about angels, demons, kind of underlying. This is where a lot of fear of channeling comes in, right? The fear
Mm,
that somebody is going to connect with a vibration or entity that's lower that is going to possess them or do them harm. And to me, that's all rooted in that fear based religious programming that a
mhm,
lot of us experienced as children, myself included, right?
mhm.
I just thought it was bullshit at a very young age, right? I was
Yeah.
like 5.
I never believed any of that crap
Yeah,
either. My grandmother
5.
tried, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Mm-mm, no, I just can't do it."
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I had to go to church every Sunday, right? And I would sit
Oh,
in church
yeah.
at right, at 5 years
Yeah.
old going like,
Me
"Okay,
me
this
too.
doesn't track. Like, God is all forgiving, but there's a hell? Does not work." Like, it didn't
Yeah, I
like
was with you. I'm like, "This doesn't make any sense. Why do I have to keep going every Sunday?"
right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
the the answer there's another piece I think about the Pleiadians in that question is, they're
Mhm.
identified as extraterrestrials, right? So then we
Right.
go into UFO and ET mythology. And there are a
Mm.
lot of stories on our world about abductions and,
Mhm.
other beings from other planets and how they interact with us. So to clarify, the Pleiadians are not physically incarnate. In this moment in time, they do not exist in physical form. They did billions of years ago when there was life in that star system. So
Mhm.
again, what I'm connecting with is an energy, a vibration, a frequency at a much higher dimensional level that doesn't hold a physical form way. And you can't ever be hurt directly by a being you're channeling or an entity you're connecting with. What can happen if you connect with an energy that's hanging out in the astral field, meaning it's kind of in between physical incarnation and then having transitions to the higher dimensions. So this would be maybe somebody who's passed, who for some reason or another didn't fully transition,
Mm.
right? And they're hanging out in the field a bit. They can come in and present a desire to support, help, but will plant fearful seeds, doubting seed. So if you're ever connecting with
Doubting
information,
seeds. Mhm.
right, that causes you to be afraid, not legitimate fear,
Yeah,
right? Because
different.
fear gets a bad rap in the new
It
age
does.
world,
It does.
which is hilarious to me because fear is so freaking important.
It's
Fear
very
is the
important. It
red,
protects
right?
us. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the red that's like, hey, don't go that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? So if we
Yeah.
deactivate our fear, we're not able to keep ourselves safe.
Mhm.
Then there's the other kind of fear, which is, the fear that is born out of unhealed and unresolved trauma. And that fear is the fear that tries to keep us small. That's what we do
Yeah.
to ourselves.
Yeah.
So if there's a connection with the being and suddenly you start to feel bad about yourself, doubt your life, your choices, you've connected with just an energy that, again, they are not directly doing any harm. They're not making you do anything, but they're messing with your self confidence and self esteem. And your guides will never do that. The Pleiadians will never do that. No being existing in a higher vibrational energy will ever do anything like.
Thank you. That is so important for people to understand, especially the part where if they're feeling negative upon themselves or feeling self-doubt and they're on this path of awakening and one day they were feeling all this love and joy and yay and then they went somewhere that was really crowded and maybe an energy attached themselves to them in the astral and they start feeling that way. That's a good sign of, "Ooh, maybe I should go get checked out too in my energy field and clean it up, maybe take a salt bath, maybe see someone who can help clear it out."
Yes,
That's really good to know.
thank you. And it can be as
Mhm,
simple as just inhaling golden light into your crown and your heart, and exhaling it and flushing your system, like doing a
that's
full
perfect.
golden light flush, right? And
Mhm,
that I find for myself, I love that you said going out in a crowded place and picked up something. Sometimes what we pick up are it's just the emotional
mhm,
stuff from the people we've encountered often. That's what we pick
mhm,
up, right? Those aren't
mhm,
entities, they're the hurts and wounds and fears and the unhealed traumas of the people that we're encountering. So if I leave the house and I'm feeling great, and then I return and I'm not, sometimes I will try to track back and see, oh, who did I encounter? Oh, it was
mhm,
that woman I passed in the grocery store. Sometimes I can't track it back.
mhm,
It's fine. I don't have to. Then I'll use that golden light, inhale into my crown and my heart, exhale, flush my system numerous times, right? So it's not a kind of a
mhm,
one breath. I like to do it a few times until I start to feel clear, centered.
mhm,
Then the next step you can take is to put your hands out and just let that golden light run out and through. And let it find whoever needs it, whoever you encountered that, right? So, yeah,
That's beautiful.
I like to perceive that like I'm always working, but often the work that I do is just running in the background. I don't even have conscious awareness of it.
That's awesome. So when you also have these monthly transitions or transmissions, excuse me, and I've joined some of those as well. Um, how do you when you schedule that and other channelers and they schedule like I'm connecting with so and so in 3 days, is that just a knowing, a connecting prior to set
Oh
that
yeah,
in
we
space and
make an
time?
appointment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that they're always here, right?
Mhm.
I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
disconnected. So,
Mhm.
and more and more as I do this work and have done this work for so many years. I've done it professionally for 27 years now.
Yeah.
It's almost a decade before that,
Phew.
right?
Yeah. Sheesh. Yeah.
Yeah. So more and more there's less separation between me and who I work with.
That makes
And I
sense.
feel the energy in my body in a way that I never felt it early on. I didn't feel it 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It's constantly changing.
Mhm.
Where I feel like I'm channeling quite often the aspect of myself that is Pleiadian, the aspect of myself that is fairy, the aspect of myself that is Yeshua. Not, so yeah, when I schedule something, it's kind of like I'm like, hey, we're gonna do a group thing, which they're like, yeah, we know. Um,
This has
and
already
then
happened. Yeah.
I'll receive just a massive download of energy and information that I unpack between the time I schedule to the time I transmit. And this is the same when a client schedules. As
Mm,
soon as a client schedules with me, the session starts. Right now, I often, when I open my mouth to channel and let things through, especially with clients, I'll be like, oh, that's why I was thinking about this
oh,
thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to have this thing where I would have a fight with John in the morning and then go work, and then I'd find, oh, this client is having this exact fight with their partner. I really understand
Yeah.
it.
Now I can relate when I talk
Yeah.
to them, yeah.
So I'm both prepped when I go into group work or one-on-one experience, and then I'm always surprised as well. Things come through that I had not at all thought about prior to the moment at hand.
Yeah, that makes sense, like the guides are saying, "Oh, now they know they need to know this," so just yeah. And then you teach a lot of channeling classes. How do those for paint a picture for someone who's interested in attending a class and is not sure what that format looks like,
Yeah,
so they can
awesome.
sink into that a little bit more and feel more
Yep.
comfortable.
So first, I come from an approach that is very grounded, practical, and right. So everything I do has
Nora's
some
pretty fun.
element of fun, and there's a reason for the fun. The fun lightens us up. It puts us in that space that makes it easier to do all of this because we're in a more joyful, lighthearted approach. And I mean,
Mhm.
fun is just kind of always been my thing.
Yeah.
But it's funny because there's oh the projection of such seriousness onto so much of this, right? Seriousness can feel so heavy. And when I say that, I don't mean in any way to diminish the incredible power, importance of the work that I do, the work that everyone in this industry does in whatever way, wherever you all are at. It's so powerful and important. And also, lightening up is a pathway that facilitates connection in an easier way. So, my classes are typically structured over a few days. So, like my channeling class I have coming up in May will be a 3-day class on Zoom, 4 hours each session. It is open to all levels. And one of the things I've found when I teach a level one class is often I'll have very advanced people come in and register for the class. And it's awesome because they bring with them
Mhm,
all of their knowledge and experience, which supports anybody who's coming in feeling very new. There's
mm,
no competition, there's no expectation. My foundational intention for the class is to facilitate everyone who is attending to connect with unconditional love, support, connections. That's it, right? That is it.
mhm,
Whatever happens beyond is the icing on the cake. Now, many things happen beyond it. We do a lot of energy exercises to help everyone better understand how we connect because everyone connects differently. Some of
sure.
us hear, some of us see, some of us feel, some of us know. And very often, we discount the way we operate as whatever, everyone does this, right? And think it's not special. So there's a lot of highlighting of how special everyone is in their just coming in already in their abilities
Mhm,
to then help everyone develop more fully the abilities they're most comfortable with and
mhm,
naturally inclined towards, which then of course opens everyone up to playing with those other abilities that perhaps they don't feel as confident. So I'm very clear cognizant, so I have a very strong sense of knowing. I'm very clairaudient. I get a lot of information via sound, noise, used to be voices. It's not that so much anymore. And smells. Scent is
mm,
a big part of clairaudience, right? This whole
mhm.
ENT section.
Yeah.
And the use of my voice in how I
Mhm,
transmit. Um, I'm not very clairvoyant, so I'm not very much of a seer, meaning I don't really see a lot of beings outside of me or flashes of light. I have a lot of students who are, and I often sit
mhm.
back and hear them talk about their experiences, and I'm like, shit, like that
Yeah.
is amazing what you're doing. It's
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm very clairvoyant extremely well, and, when I channel, I see things as stories in pictures. So they show me, like, a picture book of this entire story, but then sometimes, um, they'll whatever entity is connecting to me, It depends because I'm also audient, but I am not sentient. Like I cannot like I'm sentient. I cannot smell though. Like I can't like that sense is long gone a while ago. I don't know where it went, but so it's making up another thing. So yeah, the clairvoyant part of channeling is interesting because it's interesting how you work with these beings and what they show you from a human perspective versus an outworldly galactic perspective of
Yes.
things.
Yes. And often I see that as, they're sharing an energetic perspective. You, as the clairvoyant, are very quickly translating that into the picture, then having to translate that into spoken language to give it to somebody else, right? To share it if
Yeah.
you want to share it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Channeling has changed my life actually. So, do you
Yeah,
hear
me
that?
too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. Always in a positive too. Have you ever heard of it going the opposite direction in your work since you've been doing it for so long?
I mean, I've never heard, no, I've never heard of anyone saying that. I've definitely heard occasionally from people who feel like they're not able to adequately filter and
Mm,
control the experience, right? So
mm,
that's something that I do teach in my classes because it's always up to us. They're always transmitting. However, and I'll just add this, sometimes the reasons for those issues are psychological in origin and not metaphysical origin, right? And that's a piece that's always has to be addressed is we are whole beings. So if there is a psychological propensity towards schizophrenia, let's say, then someone might identify that as just channeling, where, well, no, it's not just that you're channeling.
mm.
So I've had a little of that over the years that way.
That's good to bring up. Thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good to clarify. Um, in these classes, they just run a couple days.
Yeah, 3 days. So I'll do a Saturday, Sunday kind of
Okay,
intensive weekend, and then the next Saturday. And we go from, like, people walking in completely never having had an experience before to the end of class, sitting breakout room with, 1 or 2 other people channeling for each other.
that's
It's
so
just
fun.
yeah.
That's so
And
fun.
I started that class first in Chicago, uh 27 years ago, very shortly after launching my career. I hate that word. Right. And when I started channeling, I'm not, there are things about
Metaphysical
capitalism.
career. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
capitalism is not, I'm not a fan. Um,
Yes.
when I started working, and I didn't intend to make this my work when I started channeling. When I started channeling, this was for me and
Yeah.
my healing, and I wanted a boyfriend. And I was like, great, I have all this information. Oh, maybe this'll help. And it did.
I love it.
But very early on, it just seemed inevitable that I would be transitioning from actress waitress to doing this as my work because it's all I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And because of capitalism, if there is something that we want to spend all our time doing, if we don't have generational wealth or unlimited access to money, then we have
Yeah,
to turn it into a money making venture.
for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's how we survive. Yeah.
exactly. That's how I pay the rent.
Yeah, me too. On that note, what other things do you offer for people out there? I know that you also
Ah,
do, these transmissions. You do Reiki. What else can people find within your bag of tricks?
yes, I'm also a writer. And
Oh,
yeah, so I have a Substack that I launched a couple of years ago after 25 years of writer's block.
wow! It just poured
Yeah,
out of you now.
yeah. It's been pouring out of me via 2 to 3 articles a week
Wow.
since May of 2023. And when I launched my Substack, I was putting out, transcripts of channeled information, right? But that's different from writing.
Mm.
That's just me repackaging what I'd already done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I had some of that on Medium, and I kept seeing Substack. I was subscribed to a couple of Substacks, and I looked at it one day in May of 2023, and I thought, I wonder how easy it would be to import my work on Medium
Mm.
into my Substack, right? And I clicked the button and it fucking happened in front of me. Like
Awesome.
it
Oh,
was
no
all
turning
there.
back. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And I was like, holy shit, what did I do? And then the
We're
next
on
thing
it
I
now.
did,
Yeah.
right? The next thing I did was I announced it on social media and sent out a newsletter. I have a Substack. I'm like, what am I doing? Right? My internet, like, stop it.
Guided. Yeah.
Yes. And then I started writing, and then suddenly I started writing about things I didn't know I'd be writing about
Mhm.
that appeared in my life. And I could feel I was on this massive change trajectory, and I wasn't sure where it was going to take me. And not long after launching my Substack, within a few months, let's see, June, about 6 months, our landlord in California, in Ojai, California, where we'd been living for 15 years, let us know he needed his house.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And we were not able to find adequate housing in the Ojai Valley due to rents having tripled from the time we first moved in. So I was like, okay, because I'd felt it and I even wrote about it in my Substack. I was like, I'm on the precipice of something. I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's coming.
Change. Yeah.
Yep.
Change is coming.
And very quickly afterwards, our former landlords in Chicago, who became dear friends with us, family, when we moved into their building in 2003, let us know they had an apartment opening. And then
Wow.
they would turn it into an Airbnb and hold it for us until we made up our mind. And our landlord kept extending our exit date, which was fabulous. That gave us more time. But yes, we have returned to Chicago after
Wow.
being in California for 20 years,
Wow.
uh, living on the first floor of this massive apartment building. It's a three flat, but the apartments are huge, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom with a backyard, like
Wow.
huge. On the first floor where our landlords used to live, they now live in the second floor, which is where we lived 21 years
Oh,
ago.
wow. Full
Yeah,
circle.
yes, as I'm heading into my second Saturn return next month. So
Oh gosh.
astrology is also something I do a lot of in my work. I don't
It's
do
the
charts.
blueprint. Yeah.
I don't do personal charts.
Mm.
I tend to channel about astrological occurrences and how I see them affecting the collective.
Mm.
And more. And it's so funny to say this, but
I like that.
astrology is a way to ground channeled information, which is
Oh,
hilarious to me, right? Because,
I could see that. Yeah, for
yes,
sure. Yeah.
but it gives us like physical objects to focus on. It creates kind
Mhm.
of a third dimensional understanding of this. Yes. So
I
I
see
still
that.
don't know what's happening. Like we've been back in Chicago for a few months and I know some things, but I don't know so much of why we're here and what will unfold, and I'm here for it.
It will present itself very
Yes.
shortly, I am sure. Yeah. I, had a similar experience last year, and, yeah, I'm having a Saturn return this year too. Must just
Oh,
be a thing.
you are amazing. Maybe.
Yeah,
Where is
so
your
excited.
Saturn? In Pisces?
Yeah, yeah.
Same. Yeah. So we were born in that same window. So
Mm,
yes, this is our second Saturn return, and I have 3 Saturn return points over
mm.
the next year. When I was 29, I had one Saturn return moment. And that preceded my initial connection with Mirando by about 6 months.
I see.
First Saturn return occurred. Then 6 months later, my entire understanding of who I was and what I was doing started to shift. So, yeah,
That's where I'm
I'm,
at. That's where I'm
I'm
at.
excited about this one.
Yeah. I'm, yeah, it's been quite the last 3 years, I'll have to say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So,
I'd not at all expected to return to my city of origin, but here I
mm,
am.
that's interesting because last year I also went through the dark night of the soul. So challenging. But when you make it out, you're like, "Oh, fuck yeah, I made
Yeah.
it."
Fuck yeah is
Yeah,
exactly the
that's the
phrase.
only way you could,
That's
like,
right.
describe it. And, but now I'm like, "Where am I supposed to go?" So I'm in a very similar that's funny, astrology is very much like that, isn't it? When you're following that, because 'cause I'm also in this, I don't know where I'm supposed to go, but I guess it'll be presented
Mhm,
when it's ready.
mhm.
So, well, Nora, I love talking to you. I could probably talk to you all day.
Thank
In
you.
fact, I know I could.
You too.
Is there anything else you wanna share with our audience about channeling or what you offer that would be helpful for them? Especially those that this is creating a library of modalities that they can come back and check out, titled by the modality, so it's easy to find. And with that note, is there anything else you think would be helpful?
Yeah, just as far as my work goes, so
Mhm,
there are classes, one-on-one sessions with me, my Substack, my YouTube channel,
mhm.
and on my website, every single transmission I have done since 2011 is up for sale. So those are
Wow.
available. I have a huge archive and library of channeled content and information.
I
I'll just throw this out there, John, who I've talked about, my Reiki master partner. So I'm also a Reiki master, and when we teach Reiki, we teach together. But he is available for Reiki sessions on Zoom, and he is also a composer. Yeah,
Oh,
and his compositions of channeled and healing music are all available on my website through my site, so
okay.
you'll find that there, and some are coupled with subliminal affirmations to help to tend
Mhm.
to particular issues. Some are not and serve as standalone healing experiences
Layering. Mm,
themselves, yes.
mhm.
His most recent one is called the Golden Retriever, and,
Oh.
yeah, and, we're dog lovers. We
Yeah,
have
you're
3
dog lovers,
dogs,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so the dogs were instrumental also in our return
Mhm,
to Chicago because as
mhm.
renters, finding a place that'll accept 3 dogs, right? And
Yeah.
our lovely friends here were like, "Bring your dogs, we want your
Oh,
dogs."
that's lovely.
Yes, so the Golden Retriever is the most recent, and it's just but it's all his music is all amazing and beautiful, and he's available for Reiki sessions. And then there's one other thing I wanna say, and, yeah, this period of time that we're in is really challenging
Mhm,
from the macro perspective of what is occurring here in the United States and all across the world, and this is a time for none of us to dim our light. This
that's
is a
right.
time for us to shine brighter, to show up, to further our own personal healing, because so much of what we're seeing playing out right now is a projection of unhealed trauma.
There's so much here, and that's why I encourage this podcast, Love of One, so people can seek other ways to heal themselves because it's not a one size fits all kind of thing.
Correct.
Different modalities work differently with other people. I've found in my experience too, they also work differently with different layers of trauma. And that's also just as important to find. Sometimes yoga doesn't work for the whole world, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom and light today. I'm just so honored and grateful. And then for everyone listening, all of Nora's information will also be at the end and the outro of this podcast episode, as well as in the description. So thank you so much. And I honor you and your work. Thank
Well,
you.
Angela, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you and all of your listeners and send you so much love and gratitude.
Thank you so much, Nora. Looking to connect with Nora or explore more of her work? Check out her website at noraherold.com for private sessions, channeling classes, and a vast archive of transmissions. All of her social handles and additional contact information can be found in the description of this episode. Thanks again for listening and being on this journey of remembering with us.